Well, thanks for having me, Daniel. A little bit about myself, been in the health and fitness space pretty much all my life, but specifically in the personal training industry for the last 22 years. I born and raised out of Vancouver, Canada. Played high level sport growing up, went to post secondary education at Simon Fraser University, got a degree in kinesiology, minor in business, and jumped into what I thought was going to be a stepping stone in my career. Has been my entire career, which is the personal training industry. And over the last 20 plus years, I've led a company called Innovative Fitness, which I'm an owner of, and grown it to 17 locations and over 200 employees in the premium personal training industry. And yeah, I mean, a lot of highs and lows, bumps in the road to get here, but we have overcome a lot and scaled obviously the business for the last 20 years. And I'm here to tell the story. How about that? I'm a guy that has no problem taking risk. And so whether you like it or not, it's my biggest strength, my biggest weakness, I guess. And growing up playing sports, high level athlete, and then graduating with a degree of kinesiology, it just made sense that I would apply my athletic experience as well as my education for at least a period of time. And that's what I was trying to do. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to evaluate if I'm going to go back to school and go back to become a physiotherapist, a chiropractor, go to med school, which I, intentionally was planning on doing, or applying my knowledge and experience into, working with the Olympic Association as an example. That was a goal of mine. And I think, I've always been a big planner. I've always had a lot of goals. But to your point, I mean, Steve Jobs said it nicely. You can't always connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking back. And so for me, I think I had intentions to apply my education and athletic experience, but I didn't know, I guarantee you I didn't have a vision that I was going to be here 20 years later. So, I thought maybe 2, 3, 4 years using a stepping stone, and one thing led to another. And at 23 years old, I took a $500,000 line of credit, debt out to start my own location at 23. And that was, back then, that's like taking out $1.5 million today, at 23 years old. So I did that back then and really haven't looked back.
And you mentioned that the medical side of things, becoming a doctor was actually maybe one of your ideas, one of your plans. When you didn't do that, and then when you did get into just like more of the fitness route instead of like the healthcare route, did that scare or intimidate or make you worried at all? Thinking like, I think there's a few things that run through my head, like what is the future of fitness? Obviously we see a lot of people, a big portion of populations of countries that are not doing well physically and things like that. And then you also have like, and I think it's getting better, and it's even better than it's ever been now, potentially, at least in my viewpoint, the opportunities in fitness for making money and for being successful in that way as well. But did that ever cross your mind? Like, what are the true financial opportunities in the world of fitness?
Yeah, well, early on, I'm definitely motivated to, progress, in my career, within my career journey. So that's probably why I went from, starting to train people to then embarking on obviously my own business. And I knew that if I didn't invest in my future, and become an entrepreneur in this category, that I would, especially back then, I would have capped earning potential. Like you can only exchange 40 hours of time, as a personal trainer, for so much. And so I knew that there's going to be a capped earning potential. So it was a decision I made that either I go on and be a corporate manager of maybe a big box like a Lifetime Fitness, or I would end up, being an entrepreneur and investing in further potential of earning, more money than just, what you could earn as a trainer. And so I think that was my mindset. It was my mindset, 20 years ago. To your point, I never was really, well, not your point, to some of the comments or questions. I don't think I was ever scared around what the industry could provide. I think at the end of the day, outside of fitness, it's actually the behavior of accountability. Like, I think there was always going to be a need that people want to be healthy, want to be well, want to extend their life. And accountability is a big part of that. And it's human behavior not to be accountable and disciplined around things like fitness. So I never thought that that was going away. I think there was, the trends and fads in fitness, like the boutique, small group, class-oriented products out there. I think that scared me. I never really wanted to explore that arena, but from a personalization perspective, I always believe that it could always get more personalized. Like
Mhm.
inevitably, with more data, with more insights, with more wearables, with more, in the future, that it was only going to get more and more personalized, and nothing was going to remove that human interaction. And so, that's one of the reasons why I embarked on this journey, and felt comfortable doing so instead of going somewhere else. That being said, it's not something. I always say that people pay for painkillers, they don't pay for supplements. So, for all the doctors out there, physiotherapists, chiropractors, you name it, like at the end of the day, people will pay inevitably more money to fix something than they will to optimize something. And so, it's just a reality. People like solving problems versus, adding to a solution. And so, or adding to optimization as an example. And so, it's been a unique journey, that's for sure. Going forward though, that's a whole nother story. I think fitness has never been stronger, especially the last year. I mean, the industry went through, a real tough time during COVID, and the pandemic. Was really slow to recover. I think the industry's still recovering, to be honest with you. But the tailwinds behind longevity and metabolic health and anti-aging and what the consumer is ready for and what they're looking for, I think is a massive opportunity and more than what we can believe. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I think it is an interesting world that COVID has created in the fitness space. I mean, obviously, so many things have changed in regards to business and how people do it, and what people are comfortable with virtual stuff and online stuff. And obviously, it's translated over into so many people going into online coaching. I mean, how does that play a role in, like, looking at modern day and into the future? I think certainly there's going to become a point when technology reaches a new height and there's that new thing. But how do you implement that within like a modern system and into making people? Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. I guess still giving them that accountability and like
mhm.
that personal touch and feeling of like, okay, this is my personal trainer, this is my coach, whatever, kind of title you want to use there. Um, but still have like the flexibility of the online stuff. Like, how do you, I guess, incorporate both the best of both worlds there?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I think we've seen essentially flip-flop over the last 4 years. Like you went from strictly in person and obviously in 2017, 2018, 2019, the growth of the physical location and in-person model was continued to thrive. And the asynchronous online world, although there was some leaders, good friend of mine, Jonathan Goodman, he was coaching people to get into this asynchronous online coaching, world, but it hadn't really taken off. And people that were positioned to do that pre-COVID, like all the power to you and kudos to you because the minute that people were restricted from going in gym, they were either supplementing their fitness journey at home, but they needed the accountability and the guidance and some level of online coaching. Now we're in a world where I think you have to look at both. In my opinion, and what we're exploring is that people can come in and do a thorough assessment. They can connect with their coach in person, but whether it's affordability, because they, don't want to spend $100 an hour as an example, 3 days a week for, $1,200 a month. Cost of living is going up right now. Disposable income is narrowing. And so, that being said, you can still have a face-to-face a one-on-one experience. You can connect, you can, have a consultation, a fitness assessment, functional assessment, whatever that journey looks like. And then you can set people up for success and keeping them accountable or engaged online, and through online programming, through group coaching. And there's a lot of options. So I think there's a blend, as you mentioned, that's a very successful blend. And we're looking at doing that. Like we've predominantly been always in person, but I just took a cohort of, 25 plus people through a longevity program for the last 60 days. And it was literally 4 hours in person, and the remaining has been online education, group calls, and accountability for the last 60 days. Yeah, it's gone incredibly well.
How do you, from I guess even the top down to the bottom level of that whole, gym owner, personal trainer, all the, everybody involved in it, how do you shift those numbers to be more reflective of money spent is actually, having the results that we need to have from just a general population perspective, if that makes sense?
I mean, it's a loaded question, and we could probably talk for hours on this. First off, I think the money spent on fitness and wellness. Some of it will probably be people chasing the magic pill, and not the right services or products to actually elicit the results. And I don't know the study or the numbers that you mentioned, specifically what they're measuring. The reality is that there's a massive amount of investment into health and wellness, and the results in America and North America are nowhere near being, correlating to a healthy living, or a healthy outcome. And so, we have to ask ourselves, like, is the proper fitness and wellness accessible by all aspects of the population, and demographics, whether it's regionally, and geographically, whether it's subpopulations, whatever that might be, I think at the end of the day, I don't think fitness and wellness is, it's more accessible than ever, but I still think it's not accessible because, it's, pay out of pocket. Even gyms or personal training studios that elicit like a great result, it's not affordable for everybody, and it's not located in every geographical region. And so, that's a problem, for sure. So that's number one. And number two, along with that, because it's not affordable, like the government's not really subsidizing, proper behavior. So, you can find a vending machine almost on every school and every street corner, but you're not going to find the same, level of wellness oriented products or services on every corner. And, on that note, like we're removing physical activity in the school system in some cases. And so that's a problem, right? And if you want people to be active in life, you have to make it more inclusive, more accessible, and you got to teach people the fundamentals really early on. And so all of these things, like I think we're putting our time and energy and money into the wrong things, for the most part. I think it's getting better. You look at HSA and FSA accounts, and the fact that people can buy items and products and wellness services, that there's tax incentives around that. Like that's a start, that's a start. But if even still, if you don't have the money to afford any of these things, or you don't have access to any of these things, it doesn't really matter. And so, that's one side of the coin. And the other side is that, talk about changing behavior. I mean, I think any good program needs a level of incentive, accountability, and follow-up. And so people are spending money on, trying to find a quick fix, and there's no accountability or follow-up. So, okay, great. That was just waste of money. They go and buy the magic pill. They think it's going to change their life, and Ozempic as an example. Okay, great. Yeah, you can lose weight that way. Might be a quick fix, but it doesn't last forever, and you have to do the work still. So, I think when we design programs, whether they're private, public, government subsidized, you name it, it has to have the right, structure around it. And it has to have, the right incentive, the right accountability, and the right follow-up.
Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier. the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today.
I just wanted to be the best I could be at whatever I was doing, I don't know if that comes from a level of insecurity. I look back, all the time, and I was young. I was a small kid growing up. I got bullied, and I tried to prove that, I could accomplish things that many people maybe thought I couldn't or wouldn't. And that shifted probably grade four, grade five. So it's probably, what is that? Man, 12, 11, 12 years old. And I just decided that I wasn't going to be a victim to, either the people around me and or, how small I was. And it translated to everything. Like I graduated with honors out of high school. I graduated with a 98% average. I got full ride scholarships to university. I played on our national water polo team. I went, outside of qualifying for the Olympics and attending the Olympics, Pan American Games, World Championships, everything. And I couldn't control that, a team sport that we didn't qualify for the Olympics. It's unfortunate that we didn't. And then at 22, I decided to just hang up that chapter of my life. So I think from a career perspective, it's like I started as a trainer. I said I wanted to be the best trainer I could be. And what does that mean to me? And so many trainers went into go into the industry. They're heavily educated. They're getting every certification and education under the sun, yet they don't understand how to relate to people. And they don't understand that, in order to scale a brand and a business, it can't be about yourself. It has to be about, the greater mission and the greater impact. And how do you run a business, not just, be a good trainer. So for me, it was like, I always had a vision to have the most amount of impact. And not to compare myself to anybody else, but if I could put my best foot forward and do the best I can in the circumstances in situation I was in, then hopefully there was a good outcome. It's kind of what I live by, to be honest with you. Like I've gone through, I'd say, some really difficult times, and it's the same thing. I talked to my wife, like I was always future facing. I was always vision oriented, goal oriented. And then people always used to say, Curtis, you got to slow down and you got to, you know, smell the roses or live in the moment. And there hasn't been a time in my life more than now that I truly understand and appreciate what that is. Like, it doesn't mean that I don't stop working hard, but at the end of the day, I don't fret the future. I don't get nervous about it because every single moment, whether it's, on this call today or what I decide to do tomorrow, I probably are going to have the best intentions at heart. I'm probably going to put my best foot forward. I'm probably going to make the best decision with the information and experience I have available to me. So then the day, why am I worrying? Because, whether COVID number two shuts down the world or something else happens, I'm probably going to do what I like have good intentions behind it. And so, I really, I think that's what I live by. What I lived by back in the day is being the best I could be. And now it's just, I don't even think about it. I create a plan, and if things don't go according to plan, no problem. You can't control everything, but what you can do is control, how you respond to it. So there's a unconscious incompetence, right? So it's, conscious competence meaning you're comfortable, and you can predict. And then the complete opposite of that is unconscious incompetence. And it's you have no clue what you're going to get yourself into. And for me, when I embarked on this at 23 years old, and explored what the future held and tried to, predict, I knew that there was going to be a level of incompetence and also unconscious incompetence that I couldn't control. And I remember my parents, I came home at 23 and were like, I had moved out and then I moved back and I came back and I said, I'm investing in a gym. They're like, you are 23 years old. You are crazy. And I just said, what is absolute worst case scenario? Worst case scenario, I'm gonna have to get a damn good job to pay off this debt if things blew up tomorrow. Like if I lost everything. But I knew that if I made, some capital investment, I took that risk, worst case scenario, I think, I ran the numbers that I'd be able to find a way to pay that back. And so if that's worst case scenario, why not take the chance when I'm young? And that's what I did. And I've made some risks along the way, and made some even more risks after COVID or during COVID. And some have paid off, and some, not as much. But the reality is that you always have a fresh start no matter which way I look at it. And I think the older you get, you're a little bit more risk adverse just based on the fact of the responsibilities you have. Like, whether it's, a home, a mortgage, a kids, family, whatever it might be, you don't want to, bring them along for the ride because, they don't have those decisions, or choices. But overall, yeah, I think at the end of the day, we can overthink a ton. It's human behavior, right? Analyze, what ifs and outcomes and you name it. But those those thoughts and feelings are generally shaped by our past and present experiences.
So at what point, in that or in those early days, I don't know if it was months or years or whatever, did you start to get the feeling of this is actually kind of working out here? And like, but even before it got to the point to where like, okay, I know it's gonna work out. I know it's gonna be pretty steady and good.
I was profitable by month 3. And so I knew that, hitting that milestone, I was like, whoa, okay, I'm profitable. Like now I'm starting to pay this nut down. And I think that was the first sign that it was going to be okay. Our business, in the brick and mortar space, boutique, space, 4,000 square feet, it's 3,900, the first location. And I I did $380,000 the first year, 760,000 the second year, 1.2 million in the third year. So I knew, like, quite quickly, whether it's the first 3 months, the first year, that I was going to be okay. And after that, it was just, okay, how quick could I pay this off? And what's the next thing? I wasn't really looking for the next thing probably until year 3. Um, but at that point, I was, well on my way for sure. When we look at expectations, or even, what was next, and how do we grow, and what was the expectation, and it one thing led to another, right? I at first, it was one location, then you're paying off the debt, then you have a new goal of opening up number 2, and then I think after, you know second location, then you're like, okay, wait a minute, I could do 10. There's an incremental level of confidence that, or exponential, that you just jump. It's not going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. It's not linear that way. And you gain exponential confidence. And then, once again, what's scary is that it's like a dopamine response, right? Like, if you're, I'm going to compare it to the young kid. If the young kid gets exposed to, Super Bowl and, the Stanley Cup and, everything by the age of 12, then they're going to get a little numb to, like, unique experiences, later on in life. I think it's almost, at some point, it's very similar. Like, you're like, okay, I don't want to just have 3, like, let's do 10. And so you then set larger expectations. And that being said, from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense too, right? Like, you have economies of scale. You have more confidence in understanding your P&L in one location and 2 and then 3, and then you're like, okay, now just replicate this, and so going from, as they say, 0 to 1 is the toughest. 1 to 10 can be a lot easier, but 2 to 10 is exponentially easier than 1 to 10. And so, I think, when you have those reps and you understand that, then, it's why there's ceilings that people hit and then they can't get it to the next level. So,
I mean, what level of nervousness does that bring on? Because obviously, like, you can create this simulation to where, all right, we can control the variables and we know if we do this, then this will happen, but then you can't account for a, something crazy, a natural disaster. You can't account for someone, a lawsuit or whatever. Like, how did you in your brain go, I know how to make this work because we've done it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, but how do I become the overall seer of things, but not necessarily the overall doer of things.
Yeah, I think there's two questions in there. Like, first off, obviously, you can only scale if you remove yourself out of the way. You can't, like, if you're a trainer, a wellness practitioner, a provider, the only way that you can scale outside yourself is that if you remove yourself and you empower people to do the same thing you're doing, right? So it doesn't matter if you have two, three, four, five people underneath you, delivering the same services, you got to buy back your time and you got to work on the things that help the business grow. You got to work on the business. You can't work in it. And so that's number one. Number two, you got to create a brand that is scalable. If I called it Curtis Fitness, do you think most people are going to come to that business wanting to work out with Curtis? Probably. And so, you got to remove your ego and realize that you're not going to be the best person in the room with all things. And you got to hire people that are better than you. And you got to, and even if you hire people that aren't quite as good as you today, be okay with empowering them, mentoring them, coaching them to be better than you. Because when they are, guess what? It takes that work away from you. It's so funny. There's, quote unquote VIP clients that continue to want to train with me, right? And I'm like, listen, I've been doing this for 20 years. Yes, I could probably give you a good workout. Yes, I could probably train you. Yes, I know the knowledge and I have the experience and I could probably get you the results, but there's younger people and more educated and more experienced people to do that better than I can now. Like it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't matter how much money you want to pay. Like it just doesn't make sense. It's so funny that we think just because someone's been in the industry for 22 years that they're going to be the best at that one skill, and it's not true. So, for me, I focus heavily on my business education after I knew I was going to remove myself from the actual service delivery. I just did. And then I started to focus on how I could actually empower and grow the brand and the business more than just my own personal skills as a trainer and wellness professional.
I guess how do you stay um I guess locked in enough but still have those maybe long-term goals in mind?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very timely question. So, for myself, I've spent the last 20 years probably working 15, 16-hour days. I love to work, so I don't really, I truly wake up in the morning, love to open my computer, love to, I don't like, no one likes dealing with issues, but I love growing. I love, the customer service side of it. I love building rapport, relationships, but and I'd always try to balance out, my own health and wellness along with my family time to a degree. Now, you ask someone that works 9 to 5, I can guarantee you their kids are going to tell them, like, share with the world that their dad or mom are not on their phone probably in the evenings and don't open up their laptop and, take them to every sports on the weekend. I definitely, I don't have that level of balance. But the last 4 years have been so challenging in our industry that, just recently I really evaluated that. I said, hey, like how present am I? As much as I carve out the time, as much as I make it a priority, as much as I try to get home, I'm not taking the kids to school and I'm not going to every, sports practice or every game. Now I'm doing a lot and I force myself to do that because I commit to coaching and I commit to, supporting the teams, you name it. But recently I just said, hey, listen, like life's too short. And I'm not gonna, I think the kids held me in check. Like I have an 8 and 10-year-old, and I realized that, they say 80% of your time with your kids is gonna be happen before they're 18. And so I got 8 years left with my daughter. I got 10 years left with my son. And I don't want to, there's one thing you cannot turn back, and that's the age of your kids. So I'm preparing not to have any regrets doing that. So I hired an operator just recently. We brought them into the business, and they're going to be doing literally. He's a beast of a business professional. He helped scale a company that got to about 200 million in revenue and 1,000 employees, and he's taking all the day to day, and I'm allowed to like focus on business development and innovation, and it's already freeing up the time that I want to stay engaged with everything else I want to do.
Yeah. Well, what do you see your impact being in the health and fitness space in the next, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, whatever it is that kind of you do try to plan out at least, or do some semblance of planning out?
Yeah, I want to be a leader in the metabolic health and longevity tailwinds right now. I think there's massive opportunity. They keep on talking about longevity escape velocity. Like they believe that, obviously by 2029 or 2030, longevity is going to surpass the rate of which we're aging, which is kind of crazy to even think like that. And I'd love to stay in tune with that and hopefully, apply what we're learning into our business so that we can be leaders in, evaluating health optimization, longevity and anti-aging. And if I can, take our locations and really lean into that, like I think it's gonna be a great opportunity for everybody else to follow.
So when you think people hear that, do you think that they think that that inspires them more to be healthy and to be fit? Or do you think that in general, maybe people are like, well, I don't really need to worry about it?
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
It's that, yeah. It's tough to say, right? Some people might think, okay, well, great. If I'm good now, then 5 years from now, I'm gonna have all the resources and help and support, and I'm gonna live till I'm 120 or 140. Um, there's no doubt that there's gonna be some people like that. The reality is that, just like Oprah says, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And I think at the end of the day, if you're lucky to live to 120, 130, 140, it's because you've done the work and you put you in a position to take advantage of it. Like at the end of the day, it's still gonna be work. We're gonna have access to data, insights, support, resources, wearables, but if you're not healthy now, then you're not going to benefit from that. So, I always tell people, if you can be healthy or the healthiest in the next 5 years, it's going to translate to, more than 5 years of longevity. And so, you got to do the work no matter what. And whether people are going to take a backseat, I think the people that take a backseat are going to be the ones that take a backseat all their life, so.
Yeah. Well, that kind of even goes to the like the what you're talking about before with the availability of different things too, right? Like at what point does certain things become mass available? At what price point, at what all that kind of stuff that, there's because there's a lot of stuff now that, we aren't privy to, but maybe someone at a certain level is, and people
Yeah.
that, even, socioeconomically status below maybe, whatever point you're at, or whatever point I'm at, they don't have access to the things that we have access to. And so it really just makes me think like, what does it look like when, and this is maybe like a way out there kind of question, and maybe, certainly not one that we can answer with any sort of certainty, but like, what does it look like when certain things start to become realities that give people, almost turn people, I don't want to say like superhuman, but in some senses like superhuman. And then there's almost like this sense of the rest of us, or to depending on what that us is, the rest of them. Like it just is interesting to me what the future will look like.
Yeah, I think there's just going to grow a bigger gap between healthy and unhealthy and no different than, wealth and poor. Like I just think there is going to be because it's all going to be based on access. Think about it. Like there's so much ramifications and outcomes if people live longer, right? Population growth, density, need for food, shelter, all that stuff. And so then they're gonna, mass produce, continue to mass produce food, and food, the food options are gonna either get healthier or gonna get worse. And so like everything is magnified, everything. So I think the healthier are gonna get healthier, the sicker might get sicker, and that's, and look at the highly populated areas in the world, right? Like you already see that, whether that's in, Egypt, India, you name it, like nowhere near the population that we have in America. and I'm obviously Canadian, so not even close. And so you're gonna see that. I think it's gonna be super polarizing. I think, you're gonna, to your point, gonna see, healthy people get healthier, living longer, and then sick people maybe, getting sicker. And I think it's just gonna continue to happen that way.
Well, with that being said, I mean, looking more at like a realistic future point, you kind of talked about what you want your impact to be and what you're kind of shooting for in that respect. And in that same, I guess, kind of timeline, or maybe even a little bit further, I mean, how do you see just this whole industry evolving in the next, 10 to 20 years? What are some of the big things that you think are going to start to occur? Looking at it from maybe trend stuff, but also like evolution of career paths and evolution of things of that nature.
That is a great question. And man, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I do know is that we're going to have more access to data and insights than ever before. And whether that ends up being a chip in our body that measures everything in real time. I mean, we're almost doing that with glucose monitors as an example, but it's going to get, I think it's going to get more and more. I think we're going to have better understanding of longevity as it relates to like brain health, as an example. Like we haven't even scratched the surface. I don't think on that. I don't think it's categorized in overall our fitness or well-being. We think of nutrition and movement, and now we're into sleep, and I think that brain health, eye health, like those types of things are really going to be come to the forefront a little bit more the more we understand it. And it's important, right? Like you can have a healthy body, but if you don't have a healthy brain, like, deterioration happens quick. And so I think that's going to change. I think we're going to learn a lot more about, our DNA, and obviously there's been a ton of data around that, but how do we actually, really magnify all the benefits and our DNA profile to benefit the most and reduce any kind of negative impact. And that goes without saying, like, disease prevention. So I think there's that's going to be imperative. The larger the population, the longer that we live, the more disease there's going to be. So I think there's going to be a ton of research and development in that area. So yeah, I mean, I think those things as an example are definitely we're going to see. I don't think, from a fitness perspective, like there's only so much that we're going to do and know. And it really hasn't changed. It's just cycled through, like functional fitness was around, early 2000s, and then it went to HIIT, and then it went to this, and now we're back to strength again, like, oh, great, back squats and deadlifts and front squats, I mean, we were doing that in the late 90s, people were blowing out their back doing it, but, and they were doing 1 rep maxes. But at the end of the day, like everything comes full circle. So I think, I don't think you're going to see much change in really the understanding around fitness as much as we are in those other areas I mentioned.
Yeah, it makes me really think like in the future, does a gym really almost start to be this completely different place, right? Like looking back in time, I mean, not even that far. You look at like the 60s, 70s, 80s, the gym was this like subculture, right? And it was like this kind of like grimy thing, and
Yeah.
specifically kind of like powerlifting and bodybuilding. And now it's kind of like got real popular, and it's more shiny, and it's more, aerodynamic, if you will. But it just like it makes me wonder if like the evolution of health in general is moving to the gyms, and instead of gyms being just this place. And I guess you're really starting to see that with like red light therapy in gyms and with saunas in gyms. It really isn't that new, but and I don't know if there's probably gyms out there with cold plunges and stuff. And
Oh yeah, look at Othership. Robbie Bent and Othership. I don't know if you heard of them. Like I think they're gonna take North America, by surprise. I mean, community, cold plunges, saunas of 60 people. Like, I totally agree. Like, I think they're gonna be, the gym is actually truly gonna be the next church. Like, if you do it right, I think there's gonna be a level of community that is gonna be untouched if you bring the right modalities, right people, the right service, and the right experience more than anything,
yeah.
into people's lives. Because fitness and wellness, the generations that, if you're 20 or older, or sorry, I shouldn't say that. If you're 40 and younger, you grew up with wellness. Like you grew up with a level of fitness. You grew up with a level of wellness. If you're 45, 50 and older, it wasn't as mainstream. So, people smoked, they drank, like, the generations today, like they're not even drinking. And so, you look at that, you're like, man, it is changing. So
Yeah.
people are growing up in an environment that wellness is a staple,
Mhm.
and so think of that, when they're 25, 30, 35, 40, like it's going to be part of their behavior.
Yeah. Just got to get people off these vapes.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see what the gym really becomes. I mean, is it people, yeah, go there to sleep? Like we have our own beds now, like in our houses, but do we go there to sleep because it's like the optimal oxygen levels and the optimal temperature and the optimal mattress and like,
Yeah.
or I'll go there to get my, my daily, my normal or weekly vitamin drip or hydration or like it just think that the possibilities of what could be there are really almost endless, especially as we do start to make these things those kind of specialty or more niche things more normalized and more accessible. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really cool what the future does hold for fitness. I'm really excited. I think in general we have a great opportunity, and with people like you out there and people that are kind of trying to make moves in that direction, I think it's really cool that they're out there. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on this podcast.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you want to, before we head out, if you want to share any socials or contact info or website or anything like that, you can.
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just curtischristopherson.com, my website, and or on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or TikTok, and I'm available on all of them.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.